All right. Welcome back, loyal listeners, to week one recap, week two preview of the ILBATDs show, our third or fourth season. No one remembers how many seasons we've been doing of this podcast. Joined as always by the two co-hosts, the commish and the defending champ. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Hey,
What's good?
your poverty champion reporting for duty here.
Should we see how the action unfolded?
Sure.
Might as well. I guess
Let's
that's why we're here, right?
that is indeed. Um, as is tradition, since Sleeper puts my game at the top, we'll start with it. One that I think we were all following Monday night. It was one of the only competitive matchups. There was some median interest going into Monday night as well, but this one came down to Breece Hall against Jake Moody, as everyone predicted it would on last week's podcast. And I was sitting there watching the Monday night game, freaking out every time the Niners kicked the field goal that, oh my God, I might have a chance. There were some wild swings. I looked at my phone after the Sunday afternoon games and had a 99% chance. And then after Sunday night football, where Amon-Ra completely laid an egg, I think I was down to like 20% or so. And then we found a way to get it done. So that was a massive, massive win. Both teams beat the median as well. So glad to get off to a 2-0 start here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 140 will do it for you, even if it's just marginally. It always feels good to come out strong like this. Um, for some reason, the iPad didn't download Sleeper, so I can't look at the whole matchup right now. I could pull it up on my phone, but it looks like a majority of your guys hit double figures, barring Curtis Samuel. Okay, maybe not everybody, but a strong, consistent showing from everybody is always nice. And then the kicker going for 20 plus is just a cherry on top. Even though he might be a member in our league, um, playing for your team, which can be confusing. It's always nice when you get 20 plus from a kicker. You're you know, not much to say there. And a defense, kicker defense combo there. Love that. You love to see that. Feels good. Feels like you're making the right decisions right from the jump. That's a good showing from both teams, really. But obviously, 140 wins you most games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pregame analysis, we pretty much had to throw right out the window after the early Sunday games. We thought this was going to be a week where the quarterback play might have put you over the edge. I mean, if we went on that, you would have lost handily. I think we were also focusing on the flex matchups here with Rashad and Amon-Ra. I think I picked your flex over his flex. We would have lost that as well. This is just one of those weeks where your role players, your kickers, and your defense kind of come and really save the day for you. I mean, 25 points from your kicker. There's a couple kickers who had over 20 points this week, which I think for a lot of teams was the cherry on top of their victory. New Orleans playing Carolina week one was huge. I think that I feel like every year there's a couple of teams who we know are going to be poor on offense, and I think a lot of guys go after those defenses matchups for the first couple of weeks. I think this paid dividends for Nick in week one, especially considering that margin was 19 points when Josh had -2 on D. I don't know, man. I mean, this week one is really where you kind of get the ball rolling, and Josh has historically been a really good team in the regular season. Starting off 2-0 is huge, and you didn't really get it from the guys you expected to. Tony Pollard got a lot of looks in that offense in Tennessee, got a touchdown. And I don't know if anybody expected Cooper Kupp to blow up like he did with week one, but he looks like he's back in 2022, 2021 form. But this is a big win. I think that we might look back at this game and as we approach the playoffs, and this could be a seed determining victory, potentially even a bye week determining victory. So big dub.
Yeah, I was
Absolutely. That's
nervous.
it.
I had to sub T Higgins out based on his injury that he picked up, I think, Thursday of last week. He might miss this week as well, and played Curtis Samuel, and that did not work out as I was hoping. He was not a sufficient replacement there. So that was a bummer, but huge to get the win, even with that injury popping up at the last second. I'm excited to watch Josh and Daniels the rest of the season. Probably not going to lead his team to a Super Bowl, but could be one of the top fantasy quarterbacks if he continues to run for 88 yards a game.
Not if his head coach is telling him that he doesn't want his quarterback doing that. That seems counterproductive there. Hey, you had a great game, but let's do less of that from your head coach. That's a weird stance there, but that's actually no surprise coming out of the Washington franchise there. You never know what to expect there. Before this matchup, we were talking about this quarterback matchup. It's crazy that the first game for this rookie doubles up the best quarterback in the NFL. Didn't expect that. And I think, Nick, when you first started talking about this matchup, you mentioned the difference between the kicker and the defense. His kicker and defense scored a total of 1 point, whereas yours scored a total of 42. So beyond what the rest of your team does, it's hard to lose games when there's a margin there, specifically across the matchup with those any two players, any four players you're comparing. When that's the difference, you're winning games. So well done there. That's great coaching there from the Chicago native, if I may.
We had another lower scoring matchup between Troy and Johnny. Johnny unfortunately succumbs to the median. This was an upset according to Sleeper. Sleeper thought Johnny had a considerable head start over Troy coming into the projections for the week. Really done in on Troy's side by Joe Burrow, but was able to overcome that with Xavier Worthy scoring a couple touchdowns and another huge game from Dallas. Baker Mayfield looks good on that bench too. I mean, Troy's bench went off as well. So scary week from Troy.
Yeah, absolutely. 123 is a good game. 115 is a good output as well. Crazy that both the matchups we've talked about so far, the margin is 8. So little consistency there. But good showing from the the Spunky Pickle team there. When the guy in your team name is showing up, that feels good. You're repping the right guy if he's scoring almost 20, having a good game, 10 carries, 7 receptions. He's that versatile weapon there. I mean, obviously they got Tyreek Hill, but when you have a running back that can do all that, you like where that team's going, and then also your fantasy team. So good, strong showing out of Troy there. Good win, good week 1 jump there.
Yeah, a lot of storylines. Obviously, Johnny 3 started Tyreek. A little bit of probably an anxiety attack when he saw Tyreek in handcuffs about 90 minutes before kickoff. Kamara's kind of back in form. Troy's team, at least through week 1, don't want to overreact to this, but if I'm looking at his skill positions, Achane, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, and Cortland Sutton, and then also Garrett Wilson. You look, they all probably didn't have their best game. Nico Collins had 14 points, but if you look at the target shares in those offenses, I mean, Cortland Sutton had 12 targets, Nico had 8, Pittman had 8, Garrett Wilson had 11. Troy's probably not even playing his best football right now, and he got a win in the first week. Unfortunately, succumbed to the median, but I don't expect Joe Burrow is going to have a lot of sub 10-point weeks, and then of course he has Baker Mayfield on the bench, who looks like all-world quarterback through the first week, and then of course J.K. Dobbins sitting there too. I think that Troy through the first week might have one of the deeper teams in this league, which I don't know if anybody was truly expecting after the draft. And his team looks like they're not even playing at full potential. So could be a scary person to play later on this year, assuming everybody stays healthy. I know Achane is questionable. But besides that, I mean, great showing. Tough to see Johnny kind of get off to an 0-2 start as well. Played well, but obviously not well enough. I want to see him. He's kind of been somebody that we've kind of poked fun at over the last couple of years in the bubble. But I want to see him kind of get back into playoff form.
Yeah, we know Troy and Josh have some bad blood in this league, and Troy might be stealing the deep bench Josh's mantle away from Josh himself. So that's exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about your matchup first, Nick. Both teams went over the median. In this matchup, both teams went under the median. So just an interesting point there. That median is absolutely at play again this year, as it always will be. That's the whole point of the median. It's supposed to split the league to make sure that you're scoring a lot of points or you're not scoring enough points.
Yeah, and those were actually the only two matchups where both teams were over or under. The other four matchups that we'll touch on here, we have 2-0 and 0-2. So just more decisive victories the rest of the way here. Speaking of which, my opponent this week, Mr. Willie, with a 2-0 week, outperformed projections. Jason also underperformed. Disappointing to see Caleb Williams. I thought he was going to be more of a stud. And I was quite frankly surprised by Josh Allen and how good he looked. Helped out by some touchdowns that you probably can't count on every week there. But also room for Willie's team to improve. I mean, Marvin Harrison only got 3 targets. Some weird comments I was reading from Kyler Murray about it not being his job to get the ball to Marvin Harrison, which I thought that was interesting. But I thought that was his job. So we'll see. I mean, maybe Marvin Harrison doesn't have the rookie year we were expecting, or maybe this was just a weird week one and he'll pop off. But also great defensive play from both teams, 22 and 12 points respectively here.
Yeah, I mean, Jason only had one guy really show up, Joe Mixon, on a new team, kind of carrying not the whole offense, but really being the backbone of that offense, chugging along the yards, chugging along the points. Whereas you look at Willie's team, the quarterback leading the way, and then again kicker defense combo there, really winning that matchup. This is the quarterback battle you expected to see when you're looking at a day one rookie and a veteran top of the league quarterback. That's the kind of margins you kind of see there. But again, Jason's guys didn't show up except for one guy, Joe Mixon. 100 points won't win you a lot of games, and he definitely wasn't going to win this one, considering the kicker defense margin and then the quarterback margin.
Yeah. Jason's roster has some up and downs, right? Obviously, I think that Caleb Williams is going to shake the rust off a little bit. That was a very strange game versus Tennessee, where there wasn't an offensive touchdown, but they won the game, came back. They were down by 17 at one point and ended up winning on a couple of defensive touchdowns. The Gus Edwards experience, it looks like that backfield's leaning towards J.K. Dobbins as far as volume goes. So I'm not sure, how long he's really going to be in the fold as long as he stays healthy. He also has Vidal on the bench who got no looks. I think it's interesting, even though Willie has 3 defenses on his team and Baltimore was playing Kansas City, I wouldn't have played either of those defenses. He made the right choice from a coaching perspective, taking the Vikings and a pretty handily victory over the Giants. I think that Willie has a lot of room to grow here too. Dropped 130 with some, CeeDee Lamb probably didn't play up to his full potential. Marvin Harrison's certainly going to get more looks in the future in a high scoring game like that. I think the better team won here, and I think that Jason has a couple roster moves to kind of figure out. Willie's looking scary so far.
Another situation. Oh, go ahead, Colin.
Just real quick, I will put maybe not money on it, but I will venture to guess very confidently that even though the Giants have a 6th-year quarterback, they're going to be the worst team in the league. They are embarrassing. They let the Vikings defense score 22 points fantasy-wise. I think the Giants will be the worst team in the league this year, and I'm happy to say that, mind you, because I hate the Giants. But there's plenty of rookie quarterbacks leading their teams right now, and they will be better teams than the Giants. I know Willie's going to give me shit for this, but I don't care. The Giants suck.
Another example of the podcast leading to roster changes. I believe it was after listening to our podcast last week that Willie realized he had the Chiefs defense slated in there to play Baltimore, and wisely picked up a 3rd defense. Not a winning long-term strategy probably, but it definitely paid dividends this week.
Hey, you don't have to win every game. You just got to win the next game. And that's what he did week 1. So I'll give Willie some praise there, but your team sucks. The Giants are ass.
We had the birthday bowl as well, and this one was a shellacking. Preseason projections were that this was going to be very tight. Slight favorite was actually the defending champ, and just not a lot to write home about here. Were you the low scorer of the week? I think you were.
I was.
Yeah.
Thoughts on your matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this is a similar storyline to last year. Trevor came out and dropped like 150 on me in week 1 last year. Granted, I don't think I was the lowest scoring team week 1 last year, but yeah, I mean, there's still some question marks on my roster for sure. I mean, a lot of my star players didn't really play up to their potential. I'm glad to see Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown. That offense is absolutely anemic right now. As a sort of a adopted Falcons fan, that was a tough game to watch where the Steelers won with like 6 field goals or 7 field goals, something like that. That was tough to watch. Glad to see, Jake Bates did well in the Detroit game. But there's still, it wasn't really like there was somebody on my bench who really went off either. And I'm probably not going to play Jamal Williams every week. I'm glad to see Rashid Shaheed is kind of picking up slack in that New Orleans offense, but you're not going to play Carolina every week. So, I mean, hats off to Trevor. Even with his poor defensive play, he had a great kicking output. And, Mike Evans, I have him in Dynasty. He kind of bit me in the ass in this one. I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think that's kind of the risk that I take when I drafted this team is, I'm glad Neighbors got a decent output. To Colin's point, I don't know how well the Giants are going to do every week. I actually just put a couple players in the trading block, Gibbs being one of them and Neighbors being the other. But overall, I mean, my stars just kind of disappeared, right? Metcalf played poorly. Addison got hurt. And I thought that Dak would have a better output. I mean, if you told me that Dak went 19 for 32, I would have expected that he would have gotten more than 11 and a half points. So it was a tough week overall for a lot of quarterbacks in this league. In general, in the NFL, I think that I was telling Nick before we started recording that this week was like the lowest number of passing touchdowns for quarterbacks in a week 1. I think in the last 10 years, I think there was only like 33 passing touchdowns this week compared to like what the average was probably around 50 over the last couple of years. Certainly lost the battle with Lamar. I kind of expected that, but Ramondre Stevenson popped off and AJ Brown kind of put this game out of reach on Thursday night, or Friday night, I should say. So tough. And I also, caught 6 points from Puka Nacua. He looks like he's gonna be out for a little while. But yeah, I mean, Trevor usually gets the best of me in week 1. Hopefully I can return the favor in week 12.
Shine or shade, the defending champ misses the playoffs this year.
Colin, I'll let you go first.
Just based on week 1, yeah, I'll shine that. This is a poor outing. It says it all when Cam's hyping up his kicker when he had 7 points. So if that's where Cam's at mentally, the rest of the league is happy. I'm sure most of us are happy to say they'll shine that. But we all know about the championship pedigree over there in Cooperstown there. All he's got to do is point to it. All he's got to do is start some shit in the chat, and we'll hear about his championship pedigree. But he's calling out his kicker for 7 points. Maybe this is the season that humbles the league champ. Some people are hopefully rooting for that. Just based on this matchup, I know I'm extending my answer here. But he didn't. Cam, you didn't have one guy score 20 points. Trevor had 5 guys score 20 points. So most of us are probably going to be rooting for the humbling of Cam Cooper this season. And it starts week 1 with a strong showing from Trevor Alpert and all the Singletaries.
I'm gonna shine it as well. I think this roster is gonna look a lot different by the end of the season. Cam's obviously one of the more invested players in the league. I'm sure he's gonna be looking for opportunistic trades when he can. You already mentioned you've got guys on the trading block already. So I think this roster will get better, but I didn't love it coming out of the draft. I normally do really like Cam's team. We normally target a lot of the same guys. And I felt like this roster was not as good as some of his past rosters. I thought the three quarterback strategy was interesting and could pay off, but I don't think after watching Cousins and Levis in week 1 that either one of them is really going to do much or be much trade value. So I think that's 2 bench spots for guys who probably don't really help the team a lot. So I'm going to shine it. I don't think Cam's going to be like at the bottom, but I think he's going to be in a fight for a playoff spot. And I'll say probably comes up just short.
Yeah. I'm gonna shade it just because I have confidence in my team. I mean, if you look at the past couple of years, I've kind of been a fringe bubble team for the past couple of years, and that's honestly helped me if I'm being totally candid. I feel like I entered the playoffs with not a lot of expectations, and that's carried me to the promised land a couple times. But I agree. I feel like, especially after drafting this team, seeing where some of the buys from some of my players are, week 14 is going to be a devastating week for me, which is probably going to be in week 2 of the first round. And after this first performance, it doesn't look like I'm headed towards a first round bye. So I agree. There's going to be some movement. I'm probably going to be forced to make some trades. So I'm going to say that I'm going to shade it. I think I'm going to sneak into a spot, maybe the 7 or 8 seed, like last time. I think I was a 6 seed actually last year. But that's honestly where we like to be. I mean, I've never been I think there's only been one season in the past 6 or 7 years where I've actually finished as a top 2 seed. And I don't think it's even been on this app. I think it was back when we were on ESPN. So I'm going to shade it. I'm not hitting the panic button yet. But there is going to be some movement around on this roster.
This will by far be your most challenging year, I think, Cam. You're starting out from behind with your draft strategy and this week 1 performance. You are behind the 8 ball. This will be your most challenging season. Let's see how much wheeling and dealing you can make to to turn this thing around. 0-2 start, tough look for a defending 2-time champ.
Hey, we're on to Cincinnati, baby. We're on to Cincinnati.
Second highest points of the week went to the commissioner. Colin, how'd you feel about a beatdown of Mr. Masarofo?
It felt good. It was a little closer than it needed to be. No one was expecting Christian McCaffrey to be out on a Monday night like that, last minute sort of situation. I was only up like 20 going into the game, but he had McCaffrey and the defense, and I only had Deebo Samuel. So Monday night really topped it off. But a strong showing, got above the median, 135, feels good. I hate that every year it seems like I have a key player get injured week 1. So I'll have to manage with that, but there's plenty of, I already got my backup quarterback locked in for next week. But there were some options there. Saquon Barkley doing exactly what I hoped he would do, drafting him in the 6th or 7th spot. I know it was arguably a reach, but when you're scoring 32 from the first game, not much of a reach anymore. Pretty confident with where my guys are at on their respective teams. Confident with some of the pickups I got this morning. My bench is not great, but it's not about the bench. It's about where your starting team is. Putting up numbers right away. So I'm going to stay fairly cautious with what I have, but I'm very happy with what my team did. I'm happy with who my guys are on their respective teams. Rob played a great game. He kept it close, but when the number 1 pick in the league is called out, seemingly 30 minutes before the game, there's not much you can do there. It would have been much closer if McCaffrey plays. But I think this is a good game. I thought this was going to be the highest scoring game. It didn't turn out to be, I don't think. But just a good start, 2-0. Not much else to say. I was the most efficient manager. That is something I've always taken some pride in every year, and that continues. So yeah, just solid performance. Really happy with it.
Go ahead, Cam.
And a relatively weak bench showing from Rob too. Even if you put in Tank Bigsby to spell Christian McCaffrey, I mean, it wouldn't have done anything as far as changing the outcome of this game. A little bit concerning, I would say, for Rob's bench. I mean, he has an empty spot here. I think he might have filled it already in the waiver wire, but this was probably his best lineup. I mean, assuming that CMC would have played, even if CMC would have played, it still would have been a close outcome, but I think Collins would have gotten the win. Assuming that Christian McCaffrey didn't put up 30 points. So yeah, probably a little bit concerning for Rob. This was arguably his best lineup, minus 7 or 8 points. But yeah, I mean, George Pickens, I don't know if you guys watched that Falcons or Pittsburgh game. He didn't have an amazing game, but he was very efficient with his targets. And he looks like he could be, you won't see it after week 1 from a fantasy perspective, but he looks like a true number 1 wide receiver in that offense when they don't even really know the quarterback situation. So I think he's gonna finish much better than wide receiver 26, which is where he's at right now.
Yeah, obviously the big question with him is just, can he get efficient enough quarterback play to be a true wide receiver 1? But I definitely think he has the talent. I still think both of these teams are playoff teams. Rob is probably the 0-2 team I would be least concerned about, particularly with Christian not playing last week. I still think, Anthony Richardson looked like he's going to be a freak in fantasy all season. He can sling it. He can run. If he stays healthy, like that's going to be a top tier quarterback. I love the skill position guys that he has. I don't know if Keenan Allen is going to be able to stay healthy, and there's just a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. So I don't love Keenan Allen, but other than that, I still think Rob's starters are really good. I thought Rob might be a little more active on the waiver wire. We'll talk about some of the fab transactions afterwards. Colin definitely addressed his bench. And I agree. In terms of week 1 benches, I think Colin might have had the worst bench in the league. Just from like talent standpoint, but credit to you. You went out and addressed it right away in the waiver wire. So, I think that's huge. And, building on top of a 2-0 start to put yourself in a position to, continue to contend. Your team is, I said from the draft recap, it's going to go as Saquon goes, and I thought that was a reach when you made that pick, but obviously he looked great in week 1. So if he keeps that up, you're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, we'll get to the waiver stuff, but Rob's team did have a tame showing. But, other than Anthony Richardson, his high point man was 14. So that won't stay the same. Waddle's going to have big games. Devontae Smith's going to have big games. Keenan Allen's had 11 targets, only caught 4 of them. We all know Trey McBride can pop off just from what he can do last year. Like, this was a tame showing from Rob, so definitely not anywhere near the panic meter. And again, just happy with my guys. They did what I am expecting them to do. And, 135, if I can average that over the course of the season, I'll be happy with where I'm at, definitely making the playoffs with an average of score of 135. Last
but not least, Butker hurts, even though he doesn't have Butker anymore. Takes
or
a
hurts.
loss. Correct, or hurts. 0-2. The Laporta potties. He does have Laporta, so that one actually checks out there. 2-0, Eric over Alex. Thoughts on Eric's victory this week?
Weak matchup. When your opponent's scoring 92 points, you got to win those games, which he did. He barely made it over the median there, so good 2-0 start. Solid showing. Jaden Reed, no one expected him to score over 30. But that offense looks good only as long as Jordan Love can come back from that injury. But Eric is consistent, and so is his team. I think his team is just going to be solid all year. I think Alex is going to ride the roller coaster of up and down. Obviously, starting out with a down. Nobody scored over 20 points, and his high point man was his kicker and James Conner. But yeah, Alex might have to make something happen, or just hope that some of these guys all hit on the same week. But great showing from Eric. Got to give him credit for being consistent, even though his team name is literally shit. People are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think Eric's performance was sort of similar to Nick's this week, right? Like, you look at your core players, Stroud, Kyron, Swift, Jay Jettis, Olave, none of them really performed up to even their expectation, but he still got the win. He got some, major points from his role players, right? Jaden Reed, Lad McConkey, Jake Elliott, good performance in his defense. I think that's just the mark of a good manager, right? If you can win games where, your core guys aren't really performing super, super well, great. And granted, it helps to play a team that scored less than 100 points. But I think that that's just the mark of who Eric is. I was with Eric this weekend he was in Atlanta watching the Dolphins game. And I mean, I picked his team to win the championship this year. I think if he can keep rattling off wins like this, where, his skill position players kind of pick up the slack, and inevitably Olave is going to go off. Justin Jefferson, I think, is still going to perform well in that offense. And of course, CJ Stroud is, I think, an MVP candidate this year preseason. I think this team is going to be a lot better than the scoreboard shows, and he's still won by 33 points. So I think he's just going to get better from here.
Yeah, I worry about when you have kind of a passer or someone who scores points in the passing game and someone who scores points in the running game on the same team that you're starting. And Alex has two of those combos between Kyler Murray and James Conner and Bijan Robinson and Drake London, and not exactly two of the best offenses in the league either. I mean, the Cardinals look pretty good this week, and you got 31 points from those two. But I don't think that's a winning strategy long term. If I was managing Alex's team, I'd maybe be looking at moving one or two of those pieces and seeing if I can get guys on other offenses, just because it's going to be difficult for a team week in, week out to run the ball a ton and throw the ball a ton. So I don't know if Alex is a playoff team this year unless he really invests and goes to work, which has not been his MO necessarily in past years. But he's always dangerous and always sneaks up and beats somebody who needs a win real bad and can cost you a playoff spot, even if he doesn't earn one himself. So we'll be watching him.
Alex does tend to do that, but I think that's a great observation, Nick, that two of his arguably top four guys or four, like his top four guys are on two teams. He's relying so much on the Cardinals and the Falcons. He should change his name to the Dirty Birds or whatever they are, because neither of, like you said, I mean, I'm only going to echo your point. Like neither of those offenses are like crazy, outstanding, crazy productive. And he's riding half his lineup on those two teams. That's a formula for that roller coaster that I was talking about. So great observation, Nick, there. I wouldn't have picked up on that. And I think he's going to be riding that, like, come soar high, soar low. That's what he's going to be doing. I swear he better change his name after this. He's got to be the Dirty Bird. How many other bird teams does he have?
Maybe not anymore.
None. Absolutely none.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, good job, Alex. You're clearly a bird watcher or something. I don't know.
I have a quick shine or shade if we want to go to the standings real quick.
Yeah,
standings.
So taking a screenshot of what the standings look right now, shine or shade. This is whoever's in the top 8 right now. Those are the 8 playoff teams. Shine or shade that those are going to be the 8 playoff teams come week 13 or whatever, week 12.
I'm shading that.
Yeah, I still think Rob gets in. I really like his roster. There's just so much unpredictability, in the league. We've seen so many guys finish around 500. With 8 teams getting in, like that means 2 teams that are not even in the top half, just mathematically get in. So I think there's going to be some movement. I would bet Rob gets in. Even though I don't think Cam necessarily gets in. Maybe he sneaks in as like the 8 or the 7 again. So I'll say 6 of these 8 get in, but all 8, no, I'll shade that.
Yeah, I'll shade it as well for very obviously similar reasons. You could argue that Jason, Alex, and Cam have had the worst showing, maybe the worst teams. So even though I'm shading it, it's like marginally shading it. Like you just have a hat on. You're not like under an umbrella or a large tree. You're just using a hat for sun protection. That's how much I'm going to shade this, just a little bit. I agree Rob's team is better than 0-2. But whose team is worse than their standing from 7 and up? We'll find out throughout the weeks. But again, mathematically, this will change. There's no way that that's going to stay the same. I mean, it might flip around, but then by the end, it's very low probability that those are the 8 that get in.
Yeah, I'm gonna shade that too. I think Johnny's always been a little bit sus when it comes to, riding that bubble. When he's a good team, is a good team. But I agree. I think the top 4 teams are probably not locks because it's only week 1, but I like the showing those teams had. I think there's going to be some movement between 5 and 7. I think Josh, Troy, and Trevor are going to have sort of similar teams throughout this year. But I'm always concerned about where Johnny falls. And I think that there's going to be some movement from 8 to 12 with who's there right now.
Should we touch on waiver wires? We had
Do it.
almost the 12th of the fab spent this week. I think it was like $96 a fab if I did the math right when I was looking at this earlier. Out of 1,200 in the league, obviously half of that 96 or so being dropped on who was a backup tight end, at least as of a week ago, on his own team. In Isaiah Likely, but definitely one of the standout performers of week 1. Received 5 bids. I mean, even Troy and Colin were in the 30s for him, willing to splurge a third of their fab. But the 50 burger from Willie takes down Isaiah Likely. That might be a fab record. I didn't keep perfect records last season, but I don't recall someone going for more than 50 fab. So I think we can crown Isaiah Likely the most expensive player in league history.
I would agree. I don't think there is somebody who was over even 40 before this, maybe, but interesting that it's a tight end on not a very pass heavy offense. And he's arguably the tight end 2 on that team. Obviously not after that game, but $50 on a tight end. Week 1, I feel like I overthink the waiver because you don't know what to expect. Someone is going to try to get their guy, but you don't know where that number is going to be. And that's why I put 33, I think, 35. I started out at 33. I figured someone else might like that number as well, so I went 35. And then Troy still went $1 over me. Neither one of us get him. I'll just throw this out here right away. I mean, shine or shade, there will be another $50 waiver acquisition throughout this season.
I'll shade it. I think there's a limited number of people who are willing to spend 50. And you might be another one of them, Colin, and obviously spent 35, notwithstanding your attempt to pick up Isaiah Likely. So, I think we will quickly run out of people having 50 fab or, enough fab where they're willing to drop 50 among the smaller group of people who would be willing to do it in the first place. I think fab spending will probably be up. I think one thing that we've learned, over the years is that spending more fab earlier in the season is probably the way to go, rather than conserving it. And then there's obviously always the playoff rush of I'm going to spend $35 on a defense for the playoffs. So there's some of that too. But I don't think someone gets to 50 again this season.
Yeah, I'm going to shade that too. I don't know if there's a lot of, especially on something like a tight end. Mark Andrews isn't hurt. He's still in that lineup. I don't know if I like the spend of that, that much, but I think we'll see progressive fab spending go down week over week, unless there's something like if Christian McCaffrey is hurt for an extended period of time. I guess Jordan Mason's already on the team, but like something like that, where there's like a true RB1 who's like a bell cow spelled by somebody who's probably going to, assume that bell cow role. I don't really know if there's any players in this league, with the exception of a couple, who are worth $50 on a spend like that. So I'm going to shade that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to shade it. I don't even think someone will surpass 40 unless, again, like you say, a number 1 running back goes down week 17, week 18. There's a playoff rush. You just spend everything you got on this guy that can change the course of your playoff run. 50's a lot, 40's a lot. But I would argue that I put 35 on Likely, and then I ended up spending 35 on Lazard and Madison. I think I got the better deal there. If I had got Likely for 35 or these two for 35, I'm taking these two for 35, filling 2 roster spots. I have some depth at running back. Alan Lazard looks like the more comfortable target for Aaron Rodgers. That's why I like, I toyed with the thought of this for like way too long, but I felt okay. I felt comfortable with getting this guy because I feel like he's going to be the more consistent target for Aaron Rodgers. Alexander Madison, I just felt like I needed more RB depth. He is the RB2, but he looks like he's also the receiving back there. Interesting that there's a lot of money spent on defenses. I mean, Chargers have a really good matchup against the Carolina Panthers, who just got 47 put on them. So I understand the $5 on that defense, but 3 on the Commanders, even 2 from me on the Steelers. I figured someone else would want them. I mean, you put 0 on the Steelers, Nick. I felt like I needed to go and grab my defense, but I'm a little bit surprised that there was that much money, even though it's, what is that, $10 on 3 defenses? That's higher than I would have expected it to be.
Yeah, I had a handful of waivers set up for defenses at different prices. So the Steelers were one of the defenses where I was like, okay, if I don't get the ones where I'm actually bidding money on, then maybe I can get the Steelers for free here. But I did drop 3 on the Commanders, who were one of the worst defenses in week 1, but they are playing the New York Giants, which tends to cure everything.
I understand that now. I should have
playing the matchup there.
I should have looked at the matchup before I said anything, but that makes sense. If you're playing a defense against the Giants, expect double digits. Expect a fumble. Expect a Daniel Jones dumbass play. Oh, he might as well hand it off to a defensive end and run for a touchdown. That's how garbage he is. Yeah, well played. Good spend there. $3 on against the Giants. I'll take that every week.
You probably haven't seen many weeks where someone drops the number 1 defense or number 4 defense, excuse me, in order to pick up the number 32 defense. But that's what we're doing this week.
Yeah. Plus $3. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about the Alan Lazard pickup, I like it. I think that he deserves to be on a roster. I was a little surprised that he went for as high as he did. Granted, there was a backup offer at 16. I mean, Garrett Wilson still out-targeted him. Granted, I don't think Alan Lazard is going to put up 23.9 points every single game. But I do think that offense is going to need to throw the ball a lot to stay involved in games, right? So I think he's going to have a pretty decent target share. I think it was, his value is definitely probably as high as it's going to be all year. He probably would have, I think he's probably worth more in that like $18 to $20 range after looking at it now. I mean, hindsight's 2020. But interested to see like how that plays out for the rest of the year, because I think Wilson ended up with like 11 targets. Granted, I think Lazard had 9, but that offense is going to need to throw the ball a lot this year to stay successful.
I didn't know what to make of Lazard. He had such a weird game. Like, he dropped a wide open one and kind of looked like he was defeated, and the announcers were talking negatively about like how he was playing, and then all of a sudden he like catches 2 touchdown passes, and then it's like, oh wow, like Alan Lazard had a quietly great game. And obviously he has, rapport going back to his Green Bay days with Aaron. So, I could see Lazard kind of being like the bust of this Fab week, and I could also see him being, probably the biggest addition to a team this week. Just I don't really know what to make of his week 1. I couldn't tell whether like the first half or the second half of his game is going to be what we get going forward. But I think certainly dropping Malachi Corley for him improved that bench. And if he's not someone you're counting on to start every week, but you can kind of wait and see whether he develops into something, I think it's a good pickup. I was also impressed by Trevor getting Alec Pierce for free.
Yes.
I didn't have anyone I wanted to drop, but, obviously Alec Pierce had a huge week. Kind of a poor man's Alan Lazard situation, in my opinion, of, could it be that he catches a bunch of long touchdowns this year? Sure. Could it be that that's the only one and he goes back to like 3 catches for 11 yards from now on? Like, that could be too. So I've had Alec Pierce in past seasons, and he's never really done much. But we'll see whether he was a one-hit wonder this week or whether that becomes a great value pickup.
Yeah, no, definitely did not expect him to go for free, especially considering Colby Parkinson is $1 more than Alec Pierce. That is crazy. I mean, Colby Parkinson had a great game. He looks like he could be a steady tight end for them. But after the performance from Alec Pierce, you expected him. I thought he was going to be a $15, $20 player. Maybe that's just, when you see a guy do something like that, you're expecting a higher value. But for free is, I think, a steal. Even though you do consider he is the wide receiver 4 on that offense, so he's not even on the field that much. But yeah, for free is shocking to me.
I also think that Troy had a pretty sneaky good waiver wire. I got Chris Boswell for free, who, after watching that offense as a miserable Falcons fan, I think he's going to get a lot of looks for field goals this year, especially considering there's a lot of question marks around the quarterback play. Najee Harris didn't play particularly well. Got him for free, the #1 kicker in the league, and then he also got Tyler Johnson as a free agent earlier today when Puka Nacua goes on IR. I think he's going to get a pretty decent increase in target share there. He got 7 targets, 5 catches for 79 yards. It was a good play, and I think he's going to get even more looks this year. So 2 pretty solid pickups for $0. I think that was a good play by Troy in the first waiver window.
Shine or shade, will we see a trade in this league before the next podcast?
I haven't been any talks with trading so far, so I'll shade it. That doesn't mean I know what's going on with everybody else. Maybe it's because I'm at where I'm at with my team. I don't feel like I need to make a move. I'll shade it simply because I think it's too early to give an entire diagnosis on one's own team. So maybe people don't feel like they have to make a move yet. And unless you're motivated, trades don't necessarily happen unless you're hitting that panic button or you feel like you can exploit some value out of somebody.
I'm going to shade it too. I'm definitely a motivated manager to trade in the early part of this season. I think the hard part, and I think that the waiver wire is a testament to this, is that I don't think there's a good grasp on individual player value after week 1. I think a lot of players are overvalued, a lot of players are undervalued, which could lead to trades. But I think that if I targeted somebody on somebody else's team, who played well, he's probably a little overvalued, right? So I think we probably need at least 2 data points of 2 weeks of play in order to really get an understanding of how players will perform for the rest of the year. So as a motivator, I'm definitely going to begin conversations with trades this week, but I don't think anything will happen until at least this time next week.
Yeah, I agree. I'll shade it as well. Same reasons.
I thought you asked that question because you were gonna shine it, and then I was like, "Damn, you're gonna tell me that you've offered 11 out of 12 teams a trade offer, and then I'm not one of them." I thought that's where this is going.
I know. Obviously, we've seen some players added to the trading block, and I know Troy mentioned he had sent out some trade offers to some people in the league. So I know there's some trade activity, but whether it will materialize in an actual deal, I don't think so. I think we'd probably need more of a sample size. Should we quickly hit week 2? Maybe we, instead of going just deep on these games, just give our quick hitter predictions.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Myself against Willie. I'm going to take Willie's team. I'm going to say Willie wins this matchup. A little worried about my team in week 2. T. Higgins might still be out. So I'll take Willie.
I like Nick's team this more in general. He also has a lot of dome activity, right? The Bucks playing the dome, the Cardinals playing the dome this week. I think that dome activity is better for fantasy output. I see a couple of rainy games on for the Buffalo players in Miami. So I'm gonna go Nick this week.
Yeah, based on the dome activity factor, that's usually pretty pretty positive when it clears your mind. You know, you're in a much more relaxed state. Post dome activities, generally speaking. Definitely the number one and number two quarterback going up against each other. That'll be just fun to watch simply because it's Allen versus Mahomes, even though they're not going to be on the same field. I will be at the game tomorrow night, so I'll be watching Josh Allen in person, running all over the Dolphins, and maybe Tyreek running all over the Bills. Who knows? But either way, I'm going to go ahead and take Willie as well. Isaiah Likely's hot. Josh Allen's hot. CeeDee Lamb's the best receiver in the league. I'll go ahead and take Willie. But that's not to say this could be the highest scoring matchup. I mean, these two matchups are the 131 and 140 from last week. So this could easily be the highest scoring matchup of the week.
Yeah, one of two matchups of 2-0 teams this week. So we'll see how that plays out. Somebody's trying to stay 4-0. Johnny versus Josh. I'm going to take Josh. Obviously, one of the highest scoring teams last week. Until Justin Daniels cools off, I think he's going to ride him to another victory here.
Yeah, playing the Giants, you know he's going to score 40 burger. That's a guaranteed lock. He's got Younghoe Koo in a dome. Oh, no, they're outside. He's got his kicker playing up against his defense. That's a formula for null and void. I'll go Johnny here. He needs the bounce back win. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Tank Dell. I'm liking Johnny's team here more.
I'm gonna go Josh. I think Terry McLaurin had like a very subpar game considering how well Jaden Daniels played this past week. I think it's only a matter of time before they pop off for that stacked touchdown. I think Cooper Kupp's playing out of his mind. I think I'm gonna go Josh here.
On to the next one. We have this one's actually, according to Sleeper, not that close. Jason projected to win by about 10 over Troy here, but I'm going to go with Troy in what Sleeper thinks is an upset. A-Chain questionable, so watch that space, but I think Troy's team just a better squad in my opinion.
So on mine, I'm on the iPad. It's showing me that he has A-Chain as the auto sub for his backup in that rookie running back. That's interesting. So he's prepared come an outage there. I'll go ahead and go with Jason just to be a contrarian here. I think he's got enough guys that'll show up after maybe a poor outing last week. Caleb Williams has a better matchup against Houston, so that could be a shootout. I'll go Jason.
I'm going to be contrarian as well. I'm going to go Jason as well. I think it's Bengals versus KC. I think this could be a recipe for Jamar Chase pop off. I think Joe Burrow gets his feet back under him this week. I think I like all the matchups for his wide receivers. I like Jamar Chase versus Kansas City, Ayuk in Minnesota in the Dome, and then DJ Moore. I think Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud are going to have a duel for the ages this week on Sunday night. Excited to watch that. I'm going to go Jason here.
Interesting that Troy is starting Mayfield and not starting Burrow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point there. Let's see how that plays.
He's made a few lineup changes. He benched Sutton as well, which I think is surprising given Sutton's target share from last week.
Right.
But we'll see how that plays out. Cam, this is a tight one against Rob. 2 0-2 teams trying to get off the schneid. I'm gonna give the edge to Rob. I think I like his team better. A lot. We talked about some of the exciting offensive matchups. Kansas City against Cincinnati, Buffalo against Miami. So give me Rob in this one.
I think this will come down to McCaffrey or no McCaffrey. They're saying they might hold him out another week just because you don't need to waste the best player in football this early. They're going to be one of the better teams in the NFC. No need to risk the best player in fantasy football, arguably the NFL. If McCaffrey plays, it's Rob. If McCaffrey doesn't play, I'll throw it over to Cam. He's got to prove something after the weakest showing of his fantasy career, like absolutely pitiful. But hey, we're here for the humbling of Cam Cooper. We are here for it.
I'm going to pick me this week for obvious reasons, but I think I have some pretty good defensive matchups this week. I mean, with the exception of Addison playing versus San Fran in the Dome, which he might not even play, so I'm going to have to make some changes here. But I like the defensive matchups for most of my skill players. Um, Prescott playing in the Dome. I don't like Pittsburgh's defense. I think Jonathan Taylor might play well in Lambeau. It's going to be a running game, I think. So I like the defensive matchup my team has, so I'm going to go with them.
The other matchup of two 2-0 teams, we have Trevor against Eric this week. I am gonna take Trevor. I think this will be an enticing matchup, probably very close, but give me Trevor and a nail biter.
This is interesting. Both teams scored 125 last week. So either team could go up or down. I think Eric's team actually underperformed last week. So I'm expecting him to go up. And oppositely, Trevor might have overperformed last week. He's probably going to go down. I'll take Eric, even though both of these teams look very strong. I don't see any questionable health statuses. So these guys are full strength, arguably. Yeah, I'm going to go with Eric. I'm expecting him to do the opposite of what he did last week, which was underperform. I expect him to score more than what he did last week, over 125.
I agree. I think if Eric's core does what it's supposed to do, I think he wins this handily, especially if Trevor keeps Jordan Mason on the bench, who's currently on the bench right now. I think if his lineup remains the same, doesn't change between now and Sunday, I think Eric wins this handily.
Yeah, this man's got Wan'Dale Robinson starting over Jordan Mason. I don't know what that's about, but again, the Giants are garbage. So Trevor, you gotta let go of your team. I'm pretty sure he's a Giants fan as well. This isn't, fantasy. I love my team, fantasy football. This is fantasy football. You play the best players.
And last but not least, according to Sleeper, currently, actually the 0-2 team projected to win here. But I'm gonna say Colin wins this. We've talked about the issues with Alex's team, so give me Colin to roll.
Yeah, I'm playing a couple waiver wires. I'm playing Derek Carr off the waiver for free against a good Dallas defense. But again, they're in the Dome, so anything plays here. I'm also starting Allen Lazard just based on he's hot. He's got the hot hand. I expect Aaron Rodgers to continue to go to him. But other than that, my two running backs, I expect them to be fully strength, going after it. I'm obviously going to pick myself. No question about it. I think I have the better team, and that's all there is to it.
I'm gonna go contrarian here. I think Alex wins. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. I think that whoever wins doesn't go above the median. I like the Derek Carr play, but Dallas's defense looked very good this past weekend. I like how Derek Carr played, but I think it's going to come down to this quarterback matchup, and I'm going to take Kyler over Derek Carr this week. But I think it's going to be a low scoring game.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Send me your trades.
I think it was a good start to the season. Based on what we thought about the draft, I think those are the teams who performed. I think we were spot on with our draft analysis. Cam's team needs some work. Alex didn't pick a bunch of tight ends, so that's a tough look for him, the tight end and his team name has two people that aren't even on his team. So just a bad look all around from Alex. Maybe that's enough trash talk before I play him. But I think it was a good start to the season, and I'm just looking forward to more football, especially because I'll be going to the game tomorrow night. So live football, can't beat it.
Hell yeah.
There you go. Good luck this week, gentlemen. We will see you same time next week.
Yes, sir.